Ethel Cain is a Pandora's box. Hayden and Hedonia created the character of Ethel Cain in 2019. Through this moniker/identity, she explores her own experiences of religious trauma, harsh romantic relationships, and living as a queer person in rural America within a devoutly religious community. Anhedonia is a person with a morbid fascination for the dark, gory underbelly of the human experience. And Ethel Cain seems to be a vessel through which she can explore this obsession. In Anhedonia's own words, Ethel is not a separate character so much as a chunk of my life that I cut off to make her own identity, because it was getting to a point where she was taking me over. The Ethel Cain project utilises both music and visual media to explore its themes. Though the musical side of the project is where Cain spends most of her time, I think her short films and visualisers deserve more attention and more respect. They're not just music videos, they're performance art pieces and deserve to be seen in their own right. So with that said, I want to have a think with you about this video, House of Psychotic Women. Let's just for fun watch a clip of that video. It's very horror film-esque, very possession-coded, and it goes on in this way for some 13 minutes. There's sometimes a voice that seems to speak to her in this very yucky, crooning tone. It's horrid, and it's also kind of mesmerising. The title of the video is taken from a book of the same name, and the video is based on the thesis of the book. Cinema is full of neurotic personalities, but few things are more transfixing than a woman losing her mind on screen. Horror as a genre provides the most welcoming platform for these histrionics: crippling paranoia, desperate loneliness, masochistic death wishes, dangerous obsessiveness, apocalyptic hysteria. Unlike her male counterpart, the eccentric, the female neurotic lives a shamed existence, making these films the rare place where her destructive emotions get to play. And one thing about Ethel Cain is that she is going to lose her mind on screen. So, you might watch this video without context and say, okay, Ethel, really cool, very scary, but what's the point? But when you look at the performance in the context of the book that inspired it, it's clear that there is a message. So much of women's pain and neurosis happens in secret. As a society, we have never been comfortable with women expressing hysteria. And actually, I don't want to restrict that statement to women, as men obviously face a huge stigma about showing emotions too. Until the early 20th century, hysteria was a real diagnosis given to women who displayed such terrifying and off-putting symptoms as anxiety, loss of appetite, insomnia, and irritability. By this logic, I would be in the madhouse. I'm experiencing all of those symptoms right now, as we speak. What Ethel Cain is doing here is taking those secret, hidden experiences and putting them front and centre, under a magnifying lens. Literally speaking, we are so close to her face during this whole video. There's nowhere else to go, there's nowhere else to look, we are right there with her. So she's telling you to look, allowing us to give into that same urge that makes us stare at roadkill or listen to the couple fighting in the street. We have this odd pull towards the socially unacceptable. So you might be thinking, okay, but what is the Bible verse going on? Is that just some cool, edgy emo thing that she's doing? Because obviously there is all of this script going across the screen, and it's such tiny text that it's kind of hard to make out. So let me clue you into what's going on. If we have a closer look, we can see that it is Revelation 17. So I'm not an expert on the Bible at all. Personally not really a church goer, but I have had a look at this verse and I think she used it here for quite a specific reason. So, Revelation 17 depicts the fall of Babylon, and it characterises the sins of these terrible people of Babylon by personifying the sins as a woman, who is known as the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Stay with me, I'm not going to analyse the Bible for too long, but this is important. Having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication, the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. It's this very visceral, blood-soaked image of this woman who's drinking... How many times am I going to say blood? There's a lot of blood going on. She's not a literal person, in my understanding, as much as a characterisation of all that can be wrong with the world. But, of course, this characterisation is a woman. Classic, right? As it's the Bible, probably other people have different interpretations, but I think in the context of this video, Cain has linked the thesis of House of Psychotic Women, which makes the point that women's madness is seen as shameful and destructive, to a religious backdrop where women become scapegoats for sin. Ethel Cain has a complicated religious past. Raised in a religious community that she has since described as cultish, the voice in the background repeatedly saying, "I love you," while the words that cross the screen are anything but loving and speak of women as vessels for sin, all bound up in this woman who is experiencing this clearly very panic-inducing state and trying to balance out everything that's happening through this lens of herself as being ultimately an evil person. Actually, thank you for bringing the voice back up. Thank you for reminding me of that, because Cain uses this creepy as literal hell male voice in her music when portraying evil in one form or another. It manages to be the creepiest thing ever, while not leaning on that really deep, gravelly tone, which is often used in other pieces of media to sort of display that a voice is demonic or evil. A lot of the time it'll be a very like but hers is very soft, and that just serves to make it more horrible. One example of the more traditional demon voice that I'm talking about can be found in another amazing song, Waking the Witch by Kate Bush. In this song, she is pleading with the devil for her life while she is drowning at sea. And that sounds like this. Whereas Cain uses this. Is that not more scary? That voice comes up again in other pieces of Cain's music, specifically in the Preacher's Daughter album. It's used in Ptolemaea, which is, if you know, you know, it's just a very creepy song. I think it just does the job. It really gets me to that terrified, horrible place in my mind, so I love it. Overall, the video uses lingering shots, ambient music, and constant repetition, such as the repetition of "I love you," to force the viewer into this trance-like state. It's both hypnotic and panic-inducing. Without saying anything, really, this video gets you to that headspace that maybe the characters in Cain's music are in when they're experiencing the stories that she tells. There's a link below if you want to watch the full video. Don't do it if you're alone in your house at night, like I did. Overall, she uses visual media to enhance and expand Ethel Cain's world. She invites us into Cain's experiences, both mundane and surreal. Other videos by Cain include one of her and two of her friends peeling paint off of a wall for 2 minutes in silence, a 50-minute film of an air vent entitled World's Largest Teapot, and a tour of Cain's teeth, with metronome in the background. Which really, like, it pulls the whole thing together. Oh. Okay. Is it warm where you are as well? Would you? There you go. It's okay, that's the sort of treatment you get here. Okay, fan break done. So, let's now talk about Inbred. Inbred is Ethel Cain's third EP and focuses on themes of generational trauma, cycles of abuse, and also heartbreak and love. Its sounds are big, bassy, often sexy and cinematic, and more upbeat than her previous outputs, despite how dark the lyrics get. Just by naming the EP Inbred, Cain is telling her audience that this EP is not cute, it's not pop music, it's going to be dealing with dark, taboo subjects. The title refers to the incestuous nature of family trauma shared between generations and literally bred into the children of the family. To give fair warning, this title of the EP is also the title of one of the songs on the EP, and that song really does talk about family abuse of a sexual nature. So, trigger warning. So let's talk about the cover. It's two women in front of a cross, staring straight out at the viewer, and close enough that we can't tell where one person ends and the other begins. It almost looks like a two-headed person, a two-headed woman, a two-headed mother. That's important, by the way, so just like make a mental note, because we're going to circle back to that. I was confused for a while about who the other girl in the picture was. I was like, the one on the right-hand side clearly is Hayden and Hedonia, as the other one maybe her sister or a friend. Apparently, they are actually both her face, and she used a mirror tool to make two faces out of the two sides of her face, which I thought was such a cool idea because it's really like showing the two sides of herself. The one on the left has more white in her clothing, a softer expression, and her hair is styled in this more feminine, traditionally pretty way, while the one on the right looks less approachable, has visible forehead tattoos, practical hair, and overall a harsher silhouette. You could see it as two parts of the artist's identity, with one representing Hayden and the other representing Ethel. The looming presence of the cross behind them makes clear the religious themes of the EP. And it's just overall an awesome cover. It's so cool, it's so eye-catching, it's striking. I love it. I just love it. So let's talk about the first song on this EP, Michelle Pfeiffer. For reasons unknown to me, if you know why it's called Michelle Pfeiffer, please tell me. I did look it up. I couldn't really find anything. This is the first song of the EP, and it's maybe thematically the simplest. It explores the dark obsession that follows the end of a relationship where both parties are unable to move on. Lil Aaron is the feature on this track, and he provides the other party's perspective. It's clear that they are both tormented by the loss of this relationship and unable to move on. The aspect of this song that I find the most interesting is that together, despite the fact that they have technically separated, these two people are still maintaining a relationship. Let me explain what I mean. Instead of the relationship existing in the physical world, it exists within the shared imaginary world where both of them spend their time. Sorry, I'm blocking my plant. The false life that they create in their minds becomes such an overwhelming part of both of their lives that the shared fantasy becomes its own pseudo-relationship. The dream space is the only space they can inhabit together, the last part of their relationship that they cling to, and it becomes an addiction of its own. The important thing to note here is that maybe they're both unaware that the other person is inhabiting this space with them, but together, the force of this imagined world becomes a real, tangible thing. The song gives a lot of credence to this world that they've created. It's not really a breakup song, it's just a different kind of relationship. Now let's talk about Crush! This is the song that got me into Ethel Cain, so I'm going to try and contain myself, but I just want to say I love this song. Before I get into it properly, I do want to talk about another queen, another fantastic lyricist, Ms. Lana Del Rey. I think that Lana Del Rey created the landscape in which Ethel Cain's music can thrive. In Mike the Snare's retrospective on 2010's music, he explains how influential Lana's music was. While it doesn't necessarily sound that strange to us now, it was groundbreaking at the time of its release because of its somber, reflective quality and darkly romantic themes. It makes a lot of intuitive sense to us now that Lana Del Rey is this massive pop star because she has been for over a decade. But if you think back to what the music scene was like just before she came into her fame, it was things like LMFAO, Sexy and I Know It, Katy Perry and TikTok by Kesha. This type of music, 2008 recession pop, I love, I listen to it all the time, even to this day, but it's completely different. There was no precedent for what Lana Del Rey was doing, which was pop that really you could dance to, but more likely you would cry to, in the best way possible. Without Born to Die, Lana Del Rey's first album, songs like Crush simply wouldn't have the space that they get now. By looking at a specific song from Born to Die, I think we can see the evolution of this genre from Lana Del Rey's starting point to where it is today, with artists like Cain. So I want to look at Off to the Races.
My old man is a bad man, but I can't deny the way you...
Thematically, both songs are similar. They detail the love of a man who maybe isn't appealing to everyone, but in the eyes of the singer, he might as well be the only person on earth. And whereas Lana's man is a bad man who loves her with every beat of his cocaine heart, a tough man with soul as sweet as blood red jam, Cain's man hasn't tried coke yet, but has always had a problem saying no. His friends move dope, he looks like he works with his hands and smells like Marlboro Reds. It's almost like Cain's song is a high school alternate universe version of the characters in Off to the Races. It's got this similar level of devotion and adoration, romanticisation of someone who maybe isn't that healthy at the end of the day. And it takes the same characters but removes the Bonnie and Clyde element of Lana Del Rey's song. Just listen to the use of sound effects in both of these tracks.
Cocaine hard.
This style of sound effect is used a lot by Lana. It brings a sense of reality and expands her storytelling. It gives us maybe a snippet of what's happening in the real world behind the song that she's singing, the real story that's unfolding. Cain's use is similar. It gives the love interest his own voice, and the voice echoes indistinctly throughout the song, almost like we're hearing a memory. It broadens your worldview of what's happening in the story that she's telling. It's not clear if they are truly in a relationship, or if we're merely experiencing Cain's fantasy of a relationship. It's hard to tell if he reciprocates the obsessive love that she is feeling, and perhaps this serves to increase the fantasy for her, driving her to elaborate more and more into this imaginary world. It leads on nicely from Michelle Pfeiffer, because both of the songs have this element of reality to their imagined worlds. We really can't tell where the relationship ends and the fantasy begins, and in many ways it doesn't matter. It gives as much credence to the fantasy as to the actual relationship happening in the real world. This allows the narrative to be a lot more expansive than if it were tied down to just what's happening and what the facts are. Overall, I think this hits the nail on the head in terms of what it feels like to have a crush. The fantasy element, the devotion to someone who no one else sees the same way that you do, the mixture of anger and love, the black eye and two kisses, of not knowing if someone feels about you the way that you feel about them. How long has that been undone, y'all? So let's talk God's Country. It's 8 minutes long, it's anthemic, it's big, it's not about love. So at this point in the EP, it's almost refreshing because it's not a love song, which we've had two of now. It opens in this sweeping way. It's almost uplifting in its lyrics. It states that the road is longer than it is hard. But almost immediately, it starts to lose this uplifting nature and is filled with images like a highway to nowhere, cold car with no gas. It's suddenly clear that actually the fact that the road is long is the painful part of this. Not the torment, but just how crushing the weight of having to experience it for such a long time feels. It explores the loss of the American dream, as well as the cycles of trauma that this creates and are repeated over and over and over again. It also features some of our first real religious imagery in the EP, with lines such as, "I learned a lesson, I need to pray and hard, final hours, take care of me, God." A major theme of Inbred is family trauma. This song looks outwards into the face of what creates the trauma in the first place, what creates the cycles, this harsh reality of poverty, of desolation. I also want to read out this screenshot from r/Ethel Cain. Overall, the song is a powerful statement about how in America you can do everything by the books and yet still fall short. The song closely examines those of faith who are trying to overcome this and citing the power of God as the reasons behind their situations. The world is vast and God's power is idealized to ease individuals of suffering. Unpunishable. Unpunishable. My personal understanding of Unpunishable can go two ways. One reading is that this song is simply about lust, about two people who can't get enough of each other, a la Bedroom Hymns by Florence the Machine, until pain has to mix with pleasure because of how badly they need each other. The other way that I see this song, and this is my preferred interpretation, is that Unpunishable is from the perspective of an abused person who has started to crave the abuse as a form of intimacy. It made me think of the line, "He hit me and it felt like a kiss," from the song of the same name by the Crystals.
He hit me and it felt like a kiss.
This line was later used by Lana Del Rey in Ultraviolence, another song that explores violence in romantic relationships. And most of all, I thought of Amy Winehouse in this clip where she discusses the line.
The Crystals had a song called He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss. Like, that's messed up. There's only a certain percentage of people that would understand what that's about. Most people would be like, how dare you promote domestic violence? But to me, I'm like, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
The protagonist knows that she is better than this relationship, but it plays into her fantasy, saying, "I'm too good for you," and that makes me need it even more. Ethel creates incredibly sexy songs that are based in explorations of abuse in a way that gets the listener into the mindset of the abused person. Think about it. We listen to the song, and it feels good because the song is good. We want to listen to it more and more, and yet there's this uncomfortable awareness that what we like to hear in the song is actually kind of a cover for what is essentially a song about being abused by your romantic partner. We're forced to acknowledge that the song is abusive, and yet we want to listen to it again and again, which kind of puts us into the shoes of this unpunishable, abused girl. So, we've reached Inbred, the titular song of the EP, and the one that most strongly explores the themes of inherited trauma and abuse within families. Do bear in mind that I am about to talk about some pretty difficult things, in no great detail. While the rest of the EP balances well between listenability and darkness, Inbred leans further into its sickening subject matter, and it's almost impossible to listen to this song in just a casual way. Its lyrics are its driving force, and especially at the start, it uses spacious and minimalistic instrumentation in order to push you to focus on the lyrics. However, it doesn't stay quiet and sparse throughout. It descends into horror as we see the abuse play out in increasing detail. We're introduced to the song with a line that could be both childlike and sexual, and that pairing of innocence and nudity already kind of brings us into what the song's going to be like. We see that the protagonist has an older brother who she idealises but is a dangerous person who others fear. She has a mother who is bedridden and she describes as being comatose. The house is filthy, something smells rotten. There's even a hint that the mother may be dead, although this is not a confirmed aspect of the story. It's clear that part of the rotten smell has something to do with the mother in the bed. The picture that is painted here is of filth, abject poverty, neglect and desolation. We've already explored the landscape of American poverty in the EP, and now Cain is zooming in on one of the most extreme results of that cycle. The lines of each chorus put us into the mind of the child who's being abused by the member of her family. That's all the description I'm going to give. As with such a sensitive topic, I don't think we need to go into detail, although if you want to listen to the song, it does give the full picture of what's going on. I think the song itself does a fantastic job of focusing more on the victim's mental state and less on the details, which in a way would be gratuitous, and this way we aren't allowed to give into the urge to just help ourselves process what's going on by just thinking of facts and logic and trying to rationalise it. Instead, we're forced to sit with the victim of the song. And that's the challenge given to us by Cain, to resist the urge to analyse and instead sit with these emotions. In this sense, the song gives a voice to a victim who otherwise would have remained voiceless. While it itself is a fictional story, this is a reality. It does happen in real life. Sexual and violent abuse within families is a real thing. And due to its taboo nature, its victims can fall to the wayside. Cain is giving voice to a child, kind of a representative of all of the children who might experience this. The song doesn't have a happy ending. No one comes to save her, but at least there is this freeing release of emotion at the end, with the girl accusing her abuser of his own inherent wrongness. We have reached the final song, Two-Headed Mother. The condition of having two heads, called polycephaly, has featured both in real life and mythology as an unnerving and rare occurrence of biology. Symbolically, the birth of a two-headed creature has often been used as a bad omen in stories. The duality of a two-headed creature, like the symbol of Gemini or the two-faced moon, evokes the sense of balance and of mystery, good and evil, what is said versus what is meant. There's a very biblical, Dante's Inferno-esque or even maybe Wiccan sense of imagery to this song. It conjures oceanic waves, flames, animal dens. Its metaphors are very strongly visual and tend to be linked to very old images. It's a song that maybe would have existed before the internet, you know? Someone could have written this hundreds of years ago. Would they have? Maybe not, but could they have? Maybe. At its heart, the creature that is the two-headed mother sits and controls the narrative. She says, "You think you create the waves, but I create you." This line shows that despite the child figure in the song believing themselves to be in control, possibly rebelling by creating the waves, the mother is ultimately the one in control. She created the thing that creates the waves, therefore she created all. It puts the figure of the symbolic mother in an almost godlike position, an unfeeling and cruel god who refuses to lay any sympathy on her creations, but believes that she is the only voice that ultimately matters. Lines like, "I won't feel good again until I'm up inside you," can be read either as sexual, as in the creation of a child, or be taken as referring to a child's safety within the womb, and the desire to feel safe and enveloped once again. Once more, we see that weird duality of something that's maybe a very innocent thing and something that's highly sexual or adult in nature happening in the same line. Also, I did promise we'd link back to this, and now we are. We see a two-headed person in the EP because of this two-headed mother figure, and again, this links back to the duality between the two faces, the dark versus the light, the harsher versus softer, maybe masculine and feminine, two different types of energy going on and conjoined in this weird, kind of unnatural way. The mother who's comatose in the bed in Inbred might be the same mother that's being described here, who has been rendered insensate by the utter misery around her and the experience of abuse at the hands of her family, perhaps knowing that a man she is close to, a lover or a brother, is abusing her daughter. We can also view the song as separate from the other things in the album. This pulls the view back to a more indistinct mother figure, And in both cases, the song explores the double-sided nature of a mother-daughter relationship. There's the mixture of need for each other and resentment, maybe jealousy and even hatred. An umbilical bond that is both symbiotic and parasitic in both directions. We now have a male figure and a female figure in the life of the young abused girl who we met in Inbred. We have the abusive father, the mother whose inability to support her daughter enables the ongoing abuse. So, we've come out of the other side of Inbred. How's everyone feeling? I wasn't able to get to her concept album, Preacher's Daughter, or her other EPs in this video because it would take so long. But I would love to talk about them at some point. So let me know if that's something that you'd like to see me discuss. This is one of those EPs that just gives you more the more you want from it. Darkness in music is not a new thing. People have always used music to explore parts of themselves that otherwise they wouldn't be able to. A bit like that saying in theatre that something like, when it's too big to talk about, sing about it. But it's really refreshing to see an artist take that and use it not for things like, I'm sad that we broke up, but for things like, this is the most traumatic thing that can possibly happen to a person and I'm going to sing about it. It's quite a brave thing to do, and to do so unapologetically. So thank you for listening to me talk about this for so long. If you've made it all the way here with me, thank you. And now go listen to Inbred if you haven't already, okay?